Welcome to Myofascial Release. My name is Hope, and I will be your guide through the science behind myofascial release. Myofascial release is a manual therapy technique often used in massage. It is a technique that focuses on the discomfort believed to arise from myofascial tissues, such as fascial planes, as well as the individual membranes that wrap, connect, and support your muscles. Myofascial pain differs from other types of pain as it originates in trigger points, which are related to stiff, anchored areas within the myofascial tissue. These are referred to as adhesions. During myofascial release therapy, the therapist locates the myofascial areas that feel stiff and fixed instead of elastic and movable under light manual pressure. We use grounding techniques as well as rollers and balls versus massage on these points, as these areas are thought to restrict muscle and joint movements, which contributes to chronic discomfort. With focused manual pressure and stretching that we use in myofascial release, we loosen restricted movement, thereby indirectly reducing chronic discomfort. Lymphatic drainage is a manual massage technique that mobilizes the lymphatic system. We work with suspension therapy to facilitate this dynamic in our sessions. This approach stimulates movement from the lymph to the lymph nodes located throughout your body, largely located in your neck, armpits, and groin. The purpose of this is to accelerate the process of removing the accumulated fluids between the cells and their catabolic residues towards capillary vessels for elimination. The lymphatic system does not have a pump to push these fluids around the body. Thus, the lymph relies primarily on our body's muscle action and movement to maintain its fluid movement, unlike the heart for our circulatory system. The purpose of lymphatic drainage is to stimulate blood circulation and tissue regeneration. With suspension, the force of gravity is eliminated, thus the ability to facilitate this dynamic is most effective. We are able to direct and increase lymphatic flow, promoting faster removal of excess interstitial fluid. This then reduces swelling and water retention. It improves an individual immune system response by the elimination of toxins, all by gently moving without the force of gravity, as you are supported by the suspension trainer. Next, let's look at grounding points. A movement therapist will facilitate the grounding of these points in sessions to support the release of fascial tension. Through the placement of the therapist's hands, with the regulation of the therapist's breath, with the individual they are working with, the therapist is able to facilitate the fluid mobilization through the extracellular matrix and fascial planes to support the individual's cellular health. Let's look at the various grounding points to facilitate myofascial release. Grounding techniques are used specifically when you are working privately with an individual to increase their myofascial release during a session. We work with occipital grounding when we are looking to facilitate the decreasing of tension through the neck and skull. This addresses the vagus nerve, as well as this supports the balancing of the individual's autonomic nervous system. By grounding the superficial backline with your hand on the forehead and the other hand cupping the base of the skull, we decrease tension in the number 3 arm line, the lateral line, the spiral line, as well as the superficial front and back lines. The hand placement facilitates stabilization, while the rotation facilitates the mobilization, which will cause a flushing of the tissue upon return to a neutral orientation. The breathwork of a 5-count inhale and a 5-count exhale will support the individual's balancing of the parasympathetic nervous system with the sympathetic nervous system. Grounding the supine upper trapezius supports the balancing of the individual's breath tempo by guiding them to breathe without the upper trapezius engagement. This facilitates a decrease in tension of the number 3 arm line, the superficial front and back lines, as well as the deep front line. Grounding the upper trapezius is a fundamental means of teaching the individual how to breathe without elevating the shoulders and pressing their tongue against the roof of their mouth. When grounding the supine deltoid and bicep, the heel of the hand is on the acromion process, with the other hand on the belly of the bicep. This is to stabilize the shoulder joint. This is to release tension in the number 2 arm line, as well as the front functional line, as the individual moves with the opposing arm. Next, we have grounding of the forearm and wrist. This is facilitated when the individual is either on the reformer or on the trapeze table, as this is to decrease tension in the number 1 or number 3 arm lines. The number 1 arm line presents with increased tension when the individual is challenged with contracting their diaphragm when they breathe. Thus, this also facilitates the release of tension in the deep front line. Grounding of the wrists, either in external rotation of the forearm or with the individual holding the suspension trainers and the therapist holding the wrists, and the individual works their breath. This move facilitates a decrease in tension of all of the arm lines and supports their ability to breathe with a lateral intercostal breath. Specifically, it supports the deep front line to allow for this breath. Grounding of the lateral intercostals is a teaching tool to support the individual as they gain control of their diaphragm and learn to breathe with a lateral intercostal breath. This also facilitates a decrease in tension of the spiral line, deep front line, and their lateral line. We now look to grounding the legs with the anterior tibialis, applying force to this area, decreasing tension in the spiral line, the superficial front line, as well as the lateral line. This supports the individual in learning how to align their lower legs to decrease tension on their knees by externally rotating the lower leg. Plantar fascia is known to cause extreme discomfort with plantar fasciitis, and working to release the tension of this is a means of prevention. Grounding the individual on the sole of the foot as they work their breath allows for a decrease in tension of the superficial back line as well as the deep front line. To conclude our grounding points, we address neutral feet when the individual is on the reformer, seated or standing, to work on the imprint of how to ground through their feet as they works their breath. Our goal is to create awareness, and through grounding, we are able to bring the individual's tension levels to a place where they can recognize where they are in space and how to attain this feeling on their own as they walk away with a new awareness of how to move and feel as they move.